Yeah, I think it is important. I think it's also important in terms of the recent developments when it comes to the so-called refugee crisis and how it's mobilized sometimes in a very ugly manner in order to deal with those who are not considered part of our community as society, German society or as Berlin society. Some would say that it's so much better in Berlin than elsewhere in terms of the city being more accepting towards difference, towards the other, and because there's such a, there's so many different groups that somehow interact, very formally and in a fleeting manner, so there's no much substance to that, but still there's this kind of interaction and they need to figure out how to get along together. So probably having those different groups, communities, representatives of different cultures make you think about difference in a different way. Community is another term that's interesting in terms of exploring it. So also like through that, following that heritage developments, I'm also kind of interested in the idea of community, what we mean by saying community, and how actually exclusionary or inclusionary it might be. Because when you say community, what do you mean by community? Do you mean something permanent? Do you mean something kind of temporary for the, you just convene in order to create a group, but then it doesn't need to be something very much fixed. And how much space there is within this idea of community. So there's also this question of belonging, what community means. Is it like Muslim community? When you say Muslim community, what do you mean by that? Muslim community, what do you mean Muslim community? Like Muslim versus non-Muslims, or Sunni versus Shia, and so on and so forth. So within those migration discussions, I think this idea of community also becomes even more problematic. And also the question of Heimat, so like in German, that's, it's also sometimes translated as community. I started with that collaboration between Kunstasyl and MEC, the Museum of European Cultures in Dahlem. And then I work in Neukölln, and Islam it's a recent kind of thing, I would say. And but what they do, so I've attended the events. Also, they organized Kunstpreis in 2016. It was a very interesting event in terms of inviting different artists from Berlin who deal with Islam through their work. So like different people like involved in the hip-hop scene, rap scene, and literature, filmmaking, and so on. But I also I've attended some workshops they organize for people who are part of that association, but also those who would like to come and learn more about Islam. But actually the idea of Islam is very important in the work. So it's a key work, so it's not something they would just deal with by chance. It's a key thing. So it's also very interesting how they deal with it, and they're all Muslim. Yeah, first you just need to figure out who you want to work with, and sometimes it's easy to know it from the very beginning. So you just go and meet people, you look at their kind of different activities. Sometimes they're more open, so they organize events in which anyone can participate. Sometimes you just need to spend more time learning about people and just meeting them on one-to-one, then they allow you to be part of the group. So it's also a time-consuming process. So and then they just let you in or not. Usually they do. It depends how you approach people and whether you decide to be part of that group. You are part of that group. I think it's important, but it's not about taking their perspective. And not about judging them, really. So it's not about saying that's right, that's wrong, but more about trying to understand what they are attempting to do, what they are kind of doing, what the profile, what their profile is, who these people are, and just by being with them, but also like participating in different activities, you just and looking at those processes on the ground, you can just see it more rather than when you come and just do an interview with a person. I'm not saying it's wrong, because also we interview people, I interview people, but I think it gives you more kind of knowledge and maybe understanding and the limitations and possibilities of the activities, and actually that all those processes are quite complex.